from the heart of rural France. This is the Keto Woman podcast, brought to you by me. Hello Keto Lovelies, I'm Daisy Brackenhall, and I've spent most of my life struggling with my weight and confidence, and have always had a difficult relationship with food. Even when I finally got to my target weight, after weight loss surgery and eating low carb, I couldn't maintain it and I was miserable. I've been keto now for over 2 years, and it has given me the freedom to fall in love with food again, without the constant gain, loss, guilt, virtue cycle of before. Health and happiness is where it's at now, running on fat. Welcome to the Keto Woman podcast. Each week I'll be chatting to inspirational women, maybe even the odd man, to discover the secrets to their success so that I can share them with you. So what is keto? Keto is a way of eating that enables you to switch your body's main fuel source from sugar to fat. Who doesn't want to be a fat burner, right? But how do we achieve this? A great place to start is by keeping carbs under 20 grams a day. So things like leafy greens and above ground vegetables, plus some nuts and seeds and the incidental carbs you find in things like full fat dairy. Choose delicious fatty proteins and be free and easy with oily dressings on salad and butter on your veggies. Once you're in the swing of things, you can tweak it to suit you. Make your own personalized keto. You'll hear all sorts of ways to keto from my guests. There is no one way to do keto, no one size fits all. I hope to show you just how flexible and fabulous this way of eating can be. I'm not a doctor, and most of my guests won't be either, so we really can't give you medical advice. It's always best to consult your own doctor when making big changes to your diet and lifestyle, because they know you and your medical history, and so have access to the bigger picture. Wouldn't it be helpful to have one place where you could find all the links? Want to sign up to my new Patreon exclusive Facebook group, Daisy's Lovelies? No problem. How about subscribing to my YouTube channel? Please help me notch up my first 1,000 subscribers by going to links.ketowomanpodcast.com and following the YouTube link. Not following me on Instagram yet? Hit the Instagram button. You get the idea. All the buttons, all the links you need are at links.ketowomanpodcast.com. I'm really excited to be bringing this podcast to you today in partnership with Wild Foods. I'll tell you more about them later, but you can find out more and get your discount link in the show notes at ketowomanpodcast.com/106. Thank you for joining me for episode number 106, where we return to the chat I started with Terri Lance last week. If you haven't listened already, go back to episode 105 to hear her story. Terri has been keto for over 3 years and paleo for 2 before that. She struggled with being overweight or obese from age 7 until about 5 years ago, and tried all types of weight loss plans and diets throughout most of her adult life. Diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in her early 30s, Terri was prescribed many medications, typically taking 3 for diabetes, a statin and an ACE inhibitor. She no longer takes any prescriptions and no longer has any biomarkers of type 2 diabetes. Terri was a middle school English teacher at the start of her career, then went back to grad school and earned her PhD in counselling psychology. She was then a psychologist in private practice for over 13 years. Terri is now a coach with IDM's The Fasting Method. She is the Director of Retreat Development and has hosted 2 fasting retreats in Hawaii. This week, Terri shares some really helpful strategies that can help shift your focus and mindset to get you one step closer to reaching your goals. Welcome back, Terri, to the Keto Woman podcast.
Thank you, Daisy. Good to be back.
Do you have good meetings? We adjourned for meetings. You had meetings. I went shopping.
I did. I had client meetings and they were great, and all ready to talk a little bit more about everything that we were discussing earlier.
Well, we touched on how you've had quite a change in your career. So why don't you just tell us a bit more about that and what you do now?
Sure. Currently, I work with IDM, Intensive Dietary Management, and I work as one of the coaches. For folks who aren't familiar with the structure, IDM has a kind of self-directed online membership community. So lots of resources, courses that you can watch the videos in different topic areas like weight loss or type 2 diabetes and things like that. Tons of science information and new handouts that help with details of fasting and things.
Kind of reminiscent of the Diet Doctor membership site, I guess.
Yeah.
Does it kind of work in the same way? You can try it out for a month, can't you? Am I right in thinking that?
You can.
Yeah.
You can try it out and see if it is fitting the bill for you and before you start paying for it. We also have a forum there, so there's a place to be messaging with people and getting support. We also have focus groups, so each of the coaches every week has at least one, and we're adding some more focus groups. And that would be like a Zoom meeting, and you would have 20 people maybe in the group at a time. And it's just a great place to ask questions, ask for support and ideas with people who are also going through similar experiences. So many of us, I think, as we're changing the way we eat and changing the frequency of eating with fasting, other people in our lives, our work settings and things often don't understand. And, everyone knows, they're like, you're going to kill yourself. You're eating bacon. You can't possibly go 2 days without eating. And so to be in a group of everyone getting it and supporting you and helping you figure out any ways that you can tweak your approach, I think is really helpful to people. So that's a really important part of the program.
I seem to remember somebody I was interviewing a little while ago. I think it might have been Glenda Carter. She was talking about how she started working with Megan. I think it was right in the early days, but she obviously went on to the membership scheme because she spoke about these focus groups. And she said it was great. That really did help her. And I think you're right in what you were saying. Just having that meeting with other like-minded people really helps bouncing off those ideas, but just the sense of community.
And the focus groups are on different topics. So if you're focused more right now on, I need to work on my insulin resistance, there's a focus group on insulin resistance. So that would be a great one to attend. My focus group is on behavior and mindset. There's another one on intermittent fasting, another one on extended fasting. And as I said, we're adding some new ones. So just really a great place to kind of get to focus on what area you need focus and support and get some information there. And then the other piece of IDM is the individual coaching. So some people want to do the membership community, and then other people want to have someone that they interact with. Could be on a weekly basis, sometimes every other week, or whatever schedule works for them. But that way you would have a one-on-one coaching relationship with one of the coaches. So that's part of my job there. And then the other part is developing a retreat program. A big addition for IDM this year, and will continue to be a hopefully bigger piece in the years to come, is to have a fasting program or a fasting retreat program where people come to a location and do fasting together. What we've started with while I was in Hawaii, and why I was in Hawaii really, was to bring people to Hawaii and do group fast there. So we had 2 retreats. They were very small, intimate groups, so brought in a few people a few times. We did 4-day fasts, and it was amazing the results people could get there. And one of the reasons we're doing this is because folks always write in and ask for, can you come to my house? Can you come to my town? I just need to fast with someone. I need this support. And so having them come in, and for these retreats, we stayed in beautiful homes.
I was going to say, the locations were just awful.
Yeah.
I remember the pictures of the sunsets and the pool and, dear, it must have just been torture.
It was torture. So the really cool thing about it is that during the fast, we weren't exposed to food. So, one of the things people often struggle with while fasting is they might be living with family members or other people who are eating and having to go to restaurants and things, whereas we were just in a house together, and while we were fasting, there was no food. There was no food being cooked. You didn't have to smell bacon cooking while you were on day 3 of your fast. So it was a really great tool in that way. And then the other part was just having the companionship of other people at the same place in their fast. So we were all in it together. And it was just this amazing connection, this source of support. In the first retreat, we had a woman who had never fasted. She said, Terri, I don't even know if I've ever gone more than like 8 or 9 hours overnight. And she did all 96 hours with no, what we might refer to as no training wheels. She put no cream in her coffee. She drank no bone broth, nothing. It was just 96 hours of a great fast. So very powerful to bring people together and share this experience. Good friendships formed. And then during the fast, we also spent some time traveling on the island and doing some sightseeing and different activities and things. We had a massage therapist come in a couple different times and everyone got massages. We had yoga in the morning and meditation and things. So just a real focus on self-care, being healthy and taking care of our bodies and fasting. So it was a great experience.
It sounds like also maybe some techniques that you could then take away with you for the next fast that you're doing on your own when you don't have that group to be doing it with, but some techniques and some memories that go with it that you can then apply the next time when you're doing it, when it might not be so easy because you're in a group environment.
Absolutely. And, we formed connections. So we message each other and say, hey, I'm going to do a 3-day fast right now. The other part of the retreats that was so amazing is, again, to get to watch, for my part, to get to watch them experience this, some of them for the first time to do that long of a fast. Some have done longer fasts, but they did these differently. They did them without support as far as drinking anything or eating anything that would kind of break the fast technically. So they were very clean fasts. But to watch the success happening, we were measuring ketones, we were measuring blood sugar, and to watch someone who is on insulin, type 2 diabetic, on insulin, have blood sugar numbers lower than she's ever had before without taking her medication, what an amazing opportunity to get to experience with her. The first retreat, I think at least 3 of the participants came up to me at one night toward the end, kind of pulled up their shirt a little bit and said, look at my waist. In just the 3 days we had gotten to at that point, or the 4 days, they could tell that their waistline was different. They could tell that their stomach was going down. So exciting to get to see them, because otherwise I'm just talking to people online or hearing reports about fasting, but to see them physically recognize the impact this was having for their body it was just, I think, really powerful for all of us. So the retreats are great. IDM also has a group fast that people can do through the community. So again, having other people who are also fasting at the same time and just kind of connecting around that is very helpful to a lot of people. So that's another resource that people can access through the IDM program.
We mentioned back in part 1, I think I was saying how you seemed, when you first mentioned to me about starting to work for IDM, and my immediate thought was that what a great fit and what a great benefit you would bring to IDM with the work that you had been doing previously as a psychologist. And so obviously you're going to be very familiar with what's going on in people's minds. We spoke before about how you have a lot of people coming to you knowing the basic rules. As you said, they've read the obesity code and they've been listening to podcasts and they know the basics, but they're still struggling with actually doing it or feeling like they're going to get some success for it. I mean, I know I really struggle with the behavioral side of it. I know how things are supposed to work. I know what I'm supposed to do, but I'm not one of these people who can just decide to do it that way. My father's very much like that. He's, okay, I have this problem. What do I need to do to alleviate that, to make it better? Okay, X, Y, and Z. Okay, I'm going to start doing that tomorrow and start seeing results and improvements straight away. Even if it's something I don't particularly want to do, I'll start implementing it. Great. I'm very much not that kind of person. I really struggle with changing behaviors, changing mindset. And I know that's something that you've spoken about. I think you were doing some lectures on that at Keto Fest, and it's something that you know a lot about and help your clients with. Maybe you could share some of that knowledge with us. Before I carry on with my chat with Terri, I want to just take a moment to talk about Wild Foods. Wild Foods is a food company that puts quality, sustainability and health first in all their products. They have everything from coffee to fish oil, and every single product is painstakingly sourced from small farms around the globe. They take their mission seriously to fix the broken food system and believe real food is medicine. I recorded a great conversation with the founder of Wild Foods, Colin Stuckert, the other evening, and that will be coming up in a week or two. What I love about companies like this is that they are born out of passion. Colin's passion for the ancestral viewpoint is compelling, and it is what led him to source the best ingredients for himself and his family and go on to share them with the world with his company, Wild Foods. But that's not all. His main goal and overwhelming drive is to educate people about how to improve their health and lifestyle, and he himself says that his products are simply a supplement to that. Of course they can make your life more enjoyable, but they are not some kind of necessary elixir. I can guarantee you, though, that you will want to put some of the goodies on offer in your cart because they are really yummy. And you're in luck because they've partnered with me to give you an exclusive discount. So use the code KETOWOMAN for 12% off your order at wildfoods.co. Not only that, but there is a $100 gift voucher waiting to be won by one of you. Just click on the link at links.ketowomanpodcast.com or in the show notes to get your chance to win. Good luck, and thank you, Wild Foods, for supporting this podcast. And now, let's get back to Terri.
Sure. I think this is a really important piece for everyone. Like, you just reiterated, we have so much knowledge and people know what keto looks like or low carb or paleo looks like and lots of resources for recipes and things. But the reality is all of that is not very useful if we're really struggling with implementing it because we don't see ourselves as able to succeed, or we feel defeated because we've tried 27 ways of losing weight before, or we've tried 14 different medications for diabetes and whatnot. So I think oftentimes when people come to a stage in their life where they're really addressing these health changes, these weight changes, a lot of it is behavioral and a lot of it is mindset. And one of the things I talked about at Keto Fest was a book that I think everyone would benefit from reading. The author is Carol Dweck. It's called Mindset. I should have looked it up because, of course, I'm sure there's a subtitle with it. And it's a great book. She's a psychologist, but it focuses on that there are basically two types of mindsets we can have. And we either have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. Unfortunately, when we're in a fixed mindset, we generally see that success is just something, or talent is just something you have the ability to do or you don't. If someone says, I can't do keto because I can't eat like that, they're more likely to be in kind of that fixed mindset. There's nothing I can do about it. Some people can do well with it. I'm not one of them. Therefore, I can't succeed with that. They tend to get discouraged more easily when things don't work. They see obstacles as reasons that they can't achieve something. And then on the flip side, those with a growth mindset tend to see more likely to see that success is something you can build, you can develop it, you can keep improving. And so effort is worth it. And so you can already hear in what I'm describing, a growth mindset is really beneficial to have. And they also see, if they watch someone else succeed in something and they're not, they can say, I wonder how Daisy is succeeding in that. I wonder what I could do to succeed versus, well, see, Daisy can do that, but I can't. So they really see even other people's success just as a good learning tool and a way to approach the struggle differently.
That's really interesting, actually, because it reminds me a lot about different motivational speakers and entrepreneurs who say very similar things. Like, if I want to get from A to B, I find somebody who's done it already and I do what they did.
Sure. emulate success to build success. And unfortunately, when we're coming from the place of a fixed mindset, we don't see that as possible for us. And I think within the dietary realm, I think this is really significant because many of us have felt like we have failed. How many times, we talked about this earlier, how many times did you lose weight and then gain it, or try something, it worked for a week or so and then didn't work? And so I think a lot of people, when we get to this stage in life, especially maybe my age or so, it's like, okay, I've tried this enough times. I can't do this. Versus, as a lot of people have talked about, the tools we've been using so far have really failed us, but we've taken it on as a personal failure. So I think that's a big shift for people to have to address in this.
What comes to my mind there is if you have a tendency towards that mindset, even if you kind of get out of it for a while, because maybe you start keto and it's working, it's working really well, and you do it for the first month and you've lost some weight and you're feeling great. At some point, it's going to stop working as well, or something's going to go wrong, or there's going to be a hold up of some kind, because that's just normal. That happens to everybody. But what was going through my mind when you were talking about those different mindsets was when you get to that inevitable point, that inevitable obstacle, is what you do at that point.
Absolutely.
And if you're the kind of person, especially if you're the kind of person who's tried and failed lots of diets, you get to that point, oh, well, it's just another one that's I'm no good at, or is not going to work. And you stop the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. I have a number of clients.
And, I can see that happening.
Yeah, we talk about that. And even right now, early on when they're succeeding, they have a fear just sitting on their shoulder that it's going to be like everything else. It's going to work. They're going to be excited for a few weeks or a month or so.
Until it doesn't.
And then it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And then they're going to feel defeated and stop. And so they also don't know how to trust themselves because they feel like they have failed a number of times. So I really try and work on changing that approach and that mindset. The other piece that I think is so important, so people say, okay, so I can try this, changing my fixed mindset. I can try to have a little bit more of a growth mindset, and I can work on that.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you actually do that?
Yeah.
It's one thing saying, okay, well, this is my mindset. That's the mindset I should have. But how do I get from A to B?
I think one is listening to yourself and how you talk about it, how you talk about yourself, how you talk about your efforts, how you talk about your strategies. I always use this example. If I say to myself, keto is really a hard way to eat, I am most likely going to struggle doing it. I have already convinced my mind to know this will be hard. And then I might eat some keto food that I really like, but in the back of my mind, I know, but it's going to be hard. And so interrupting ourselves, catching ourselves saying that, and I try not to be Pollyanna about it, but to say, okay, keto is new to me. There are some things about keto that I have found challenging. That's realistic without being kind of foreclosing on the idea that it's just going to be hard and a struggle. Same with fasting. When people say, I can't possibly fast more than 24 hours, I don't understand how people do that. Your mind has already been set. And getting past hour 24 will be a challenge for you because you've already told it can't do it. And so again, to think about how we talk to ourselves. 24 hours will be a new goal for me. I'll be interested to see how my body does after 24 hours. That opens my mind up. It's going to learn. It's going to get to experience. There's no succeed and fail talk in that. So how we talk to ourselves about ourselves and what we're doing, I think is really important. I'm sure you hear this a lot. I hear this a lot when I'm talking about fasting with people. Often one of the first things people will say is, I don't know that I can do that because I'm just, I'm addicted to carbs, or I have to have sugar. I always eat sugar. Even those words, I am addicted to this in a way that, it doesn't matter what we talk about right now because I'm going to come back to using it in a problematic way. Once again, I believe that in saying it to ourselves frequently in that way, we are affirming for our brain that we can't do it, that we're going to get stuck in that place of, well, it doesn't matter, Terri, because you're going to come back to this sugar eventually. So,
It's interesting, isn't it? You almost need to record your thoughts or record what you say, because a lot of it just spills out automatically.
Absolutely.
And you don't realize how that's feeding back.
Absolutely. And what I'm finding more and more in my work, very similar to my work as a psychologist, but so much of this is about old messages that we've been carrying around with us for a very long time about our abilities, about our worth. So many people I talk to about it, and they recognize they're not doing certain things that would be good self-care because underneath it all, they've learned not to take care of themselves. They don't value themselves enough. And I know this starts to sound kind of deep and more personal, but I think it's a real issue. If we don't value ourselves enough, why do things that are good for our health? Doing something that's easy or convenient makes a lot more sense. Stopping at this food place and getting this food makes more sense than, no, that isn't how I take care of myself. The inconvenience of going home and making whatever, that's good self-care. But we've lost sight of that in our busy schedules and our busy lives, that self-care is often one of the first things that people let go. I see that particularly for women and particularly for moms, because they've spent much of their lives taking care of other people's needs and not having maybe enough room to take care of their own, or enough validation to take care of their own needs. So I think catching our thoughts about ourselves, even I think thinking about how we see our body. If I keep saying to myself as a fat person, as someone who is always overweight, as an obese person, whatever language I use around it, I have taken that again. I'm telling my brain that is my set point. So being careful, if those terms have any negative or pejorative feeling to us, stop using them. If you want to believe differently about yourself, you have to stop repeating the old beliefs, because really our beliefs are just things that we think often. And so if we want to change beliefs, we have to think a new thought often until that old one is gone and the new one has taken its place.
It's amazing what you can do if you can change your perspective about something. And it's something, it monumentally changed the way I saw my body. And I would love for everyone to do this. I doubt whether most people would. And to be honest, I don't know how I made that leap. This was back when I'd started losing weight. And I can't remember what weight I was at the time, but I was still pretty big. I seem to remember 16 stone or something. I'm not sure how that converts into pounds. I can't do the maths in my head, but quite a lot, sizable. And I was at a get-together with some friends, and this artist was there, and she was chatting about how she was going to be doing some drawing and watercolor classes, and how she was looking for models. She wanted some life class models. I said, oh yeah, I'll do that.
Wow.
And I went home and I was like, what have you just said you'll do?
Yeah.
But of course I said I'd do it. And so I turned up. And I kid you not, I think there were 25, 30 people in a circle. Bearing in mind, I've never done this before, was very self-conscious about my body. Into this room was this circle of people, and I was in the middle, naked.
Wow.
Having to do these poses. So I'd never done it before, but I've got a fairly artistic brain. Although I'm not very good at drawing, I'm quite interested in it. So I've kind of got that. And this was part of the changing of the perspective. I could see myself from their perspective, so could make quite an interesting shape, so strike fairly interesting poses. Like, it's much more interesting to turn your body slightly, things like that. You can just imagine if you're wanting to draw a form, you're thinking of these interesting shapes. So it was made up of short poses through to long poses at the end. But you can imagine, and these people were not more than maybe 1-2 meters away from me. They weren't very far from me at all. It was terrifying. But I have to tell you, driving home after doing that, it was like I'd taken some incredible drug. I was on this incredible high. And ever since that, I've just had this slightly different perspective. And I've lost a lot of, I still worry often about the way I look, and I don't like the way I look in certain things and all the rest of it. But I let a lot of that go just by changing this perspective and doing something I never thought I'd be able to do. I mean, it helped that they were lovely people, and so I wouldn't recommend going and doing a life class for the local school or something. It might not be the best way to do it. But they were looking at you in a particular kind of way. They were looking at you as something interesting to draw. The fact that there were rolls of fat hanging over was just something interesting to draw.
Absolutely.
So it just gave you this completely different way to look at your body.
Absolutely. And the idea that I think most of us at some point often struggle with is we anticipate how people are judging us, whether it's about our body or other things. And the reality is most people are focusing on themselves enough that they don't even notice. They weren't, like you said, they weren't noticing, why are there 2 rolls of fat there? Wow, what has she been eating? They're just like, okay, well, how will I draw that? How could I capture that? And so we tend to think people are focusing so much on critiquing us when they're really much more focused on themselves and their own experience. That's great that you were able to experience such a shift in accepting your body and not judging yourself so harshly.
And I'll tell you what was interesting. I went back to do with the same people. I mean, I did it over a period of time, went quite a few times, but I went back after losing quite a lot of weight, and they didn't like it as much. You could tell that actually they didn't like the way I looked as much as they did before. They preferred the shape I was before. It was slightly, less interesting to draw, whatever. So that was quite interesting, quite an eye-opener in just viewing your body in a completely different way. Mm-hmm. And it is what you're saying, it's taking the judgment out of it. That's the important bit, isn't it?
And it's getting rid of the old beliefs about our bodies. I don't remember, there was another person you had on recently, I think, talking about this, that one of the challenges actually is, how do I get to know myself differently? How do I know myself at this weight versus when I was at that weight, if our goal is weight loss? Or how do I understand myself as someone who's non-diabetic versus someone who is diabetic? It's like a new identity. I had a somewhat similar experience, but mine was a little different than what you just described. I went to Nicaragua a couple of years ago. I went to an island, arrived on the island, and had to be transported to this next place on a motorcycle. And at some point in my life, I weighed over 210 pounds. I stopped weighing at that point, so I don't know how much, but so that's how I kind of see my body and know my body. And at the time I was there, I was probably about 130 maybe. So I get off the boat and the man comes to pick me up on the motorcycle, and he's this very thin man on this like motorbike, and he's going to like just toss me up behind him. So of course in my mind, I'm picturing I'm 200 pounds. He's not going to be able to help me. I'm going to tip us over. This is never going to work. He's not even going to be able to transport me. And I was nervous and I was so self-conscious, and he just kind of put one arm up, moved me, and I rode on the motorcycle, and it was such a weird experience to really be aware of my body was different. I wasn't the same weight that I always had continued to see myself. So very significant. And I think that's a shift that many of us have to get used to in this process of changing our health and changing our weight, that we become known to ourselves differently in that process. The other thing that I think kind of ties in with that is, in general, to change our mindset and to start focusing on things differently is, like I said, how we talk to ourselves. The other thing is our brains tend to think in pictures. So what pictures we're giving ourselves. If I was giving my brain the picture of myself at 210 pounds tipping over this motorcycle, I was going to feel very uncomfortable and it was not going to go well. But if I could picture it going well and I could picture myself riding safely on this motorcycle and not causing us to fall or something, my brain will believe that instead. So our brain will believe the pictures we present it. So if we're presenting it pictures of failure, it will focus on that. And if we present it pictures of success, it will focus on that. So thinking about the images we give our brain, I think is another really important thing. Someone might picture themselves fasting and falling over in exhaustion at hour 37. Well, that's not a really helpful thing to be giving your brain. So instead, to give it an image of you maybe taking a brisk walk at hour 37, so much more empowering.
And I guess that just comes down to practice, like anything else, to try and change your mindset, to try and change the way you see things. You just have to keep trying to chip away at it, and not, like with anything else, like with changing diet, if something goes wrong one time, or if it's not going according to plan, it's just to be a bit easy on yourself and just try again the next day. Just keep practicing, because it takes a long while, doesn't it, to undo old habits.
Absolutely. And like you were saying, partly just becoming aware of them. So many of these thoughts happen without our really conscious level, which is actually where our brain spends more of its time. So it pulls these things out with us even being aware. So we have to consciously change them enough times so that those become the unconscious thoughts. Because many of our unconscious thoughts now were started many, many, many years ago. My nickname as a small child from my dad was Porky. So that's the kind of subconscious thoughts of myself and my body. I have to do a lot of work on the outside to not think of Porky getting on the back of that motorcycle.
Yeah.
The other thing I think, again, just thinking about the images, the messages, the things we tell our mind, it believes. And there was a study done. I thought this was really a fascinating thing. And I'm not going to remember all the details, but I'll give you the gist of it. A study was done, and it took a number of older adults, maybe 80 years old, let's say, and took them to like a retreat. But in this retreat, it was maybe in the 1970s, let's say. They made everything in that surrounding environment from like 20 years prior. So everything was from 1955. The music, the way everyone was dressed, everything looked and sounded like it was 1955. And they observed the behaviors of the people there, the illnesses, the people who were walking with a cane, hunched over, whatever the things were. By the end of that time there, canes had been put away, people were walking upright that had come in hunched over, people were, walking without limping, dancing. So the reality is they felt 20 years younger. But obviously nothing had changed except what stimuli they were getting about the time frame, and then that related to their age. So they acted like they were 55 or 60 instead of 85. So by changing nothing else but the stimulus that we're giving our brain, we can really affect certain things quite intensely.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think I've said it already about it's such a good marriage of the psychology coming to work with the coaching that you're doing, because it seems to me that that's such an integral part. Most people, I would argue, that have a weight issue or other health issues that have built up over a long period of time can't be fixed with just changing the practicalities of something. They've got to change their behavior and their mindset. That's the key part to making it last, really.
Absolutely.
Because anyone can force themselves into change for a given period of time, couple of weeks, couple of months, couple of years even. But to sustain that, they've got to change the way they think about things, haven't they?
Absolutely. And I was thinking about this earlier when we were talking, and now I think it really makes sense to me. You were talking earlier about someone like your dad who's like, okay, what do I need to do to fix this problem? And I'll just do it. And that didn't feel like your approach. I remember when I first did the Whole30 that I extended into a Whole 100. And so many people in my life were so shocked because I had eaten so horribly before that. I drank diet soda all day. I woke up with it in my hand. I went to sleep with it on my nightstand. Pop-Tarts. My daily intake was so many English muffins and peanut butter. They were kind of my staple food. It was insane. So March 1st, everything changed. Didn't drink another diet soda. Didn't eat another English muffin. So many things changed. And I think I even surprised myself because it was just like, okay, what do I have to do? And I'll do it. But what I found is that it was years later when some of the old mindset stuff and the old self-image stuff started to come out, that those behaviors were now more challenging. In the beginning, it was freeing.
Yeah.
I didn't have to ask how many cookies to eat today. I just don't eat cookies anymore. But over time, it gave me more space to have to really examine things.
That sustainability part, isn't it? That's the maintenance part. That's the bit that, because you can get really gung-ho about a change and really fired up and enthusiastic about something. But ultimately, often something happens and it starts wearing off or it becomes more challenging. And that's when you've got to try and bring these other things in to help.
Absolutely. And I think both doing a low-carb keto approach and fasting bring this to another level for most people in that once you're no longer using certain food or frequency of eating or eating at all, so any one of those as a way of managing emotion, you've got to figure out what's going on. You've got to figure out what else to do with the emotion because it's like taking away your known coping strategies. Just recently, while I was moving, a lot of stressful things were happening. First really stressful event happened while I was at a Starbucks. The first thought in my mind, they have cake pops up at the counter. This would be a time where I could go get a cake pop. Maybe I'd feel better if I ate a cake pop. So this is years into this for me. And I still had to consciously think through, will that really help me? I will probably feel pretty good for about 1 minute while I'm eating the cake pop. Well, let's be real, about 30 seconds while I'm eating the cake pop. But then all of these stressors about what just happened are still going to be there. All of these other feelings are still going to be there. And I'm actually going to have an additional layer of feelings because of what I just ate.
That's the trouble. I mean, well, mentally, you're going to feel bad about it, but physically, it can pull you down and just make you feel bad.
Yeah. So again, I guess I just wanted to point out that I think the changing in mindset and changing in behavior obviously is important early on, but I wasn't even aware of some of the challenges of it until further down the road. And I think fasting actually made it even more evident to me because now it's not even, okay, well, I'm not going to eat cookies, but I'm going to eat some more cheese or I'm going to eat some more keto foods versus, okay, I'm fasting today and I'm having an emotion. What will I do with that?
Yeah, so you've really got to figure it out.
Yeah.
Be aware of it and figure out what to do with it.
Absolutely. And so again, I just think, through kind of the low carb keto world and then through the fasting world, I'm really seeing more and more. It gives us this opportunity to really work on some of our personal stuff about how we talk to ourselves, how we see ourselves, how we cope, how we manage emotions and experiences. It's really a lot of opportunity for growth and changing old unconscious behaviors.
And I know a lot of people who start eating low carb and keto sort of naturally fall into doing some fasting, even if it's just changing their daily eating window. Most people I've seen anyway tend to end up eating twice a day instead of 3 times plus snacks, or even some people 1 meal a day, whatever. They tend to eat less and less frequently. So they fall into some kind of fasting, and many often go into doing more regular fast and extended fast. Do you find that's the usual pattern with people who are coming to you, people who are working with IDM, or are there a lot of people that just use fasting on its own and eat the normal standard American diet? Because it strikes me it would be much more difficult fasting if that's the way you were eating.
In my own work with clients, I do see most of my clients are doing some version of a lower carb way of eating, whether it's as far low carb as keto or not, but more whole foods, more low carb. And I've worked with some who aren't really interested in that. And my experience, and I think if you listen to Megan talk about this, obviously she's worked with thousands of people coming through. It just means fasting is harder. And you're going to go through that period of time where your body is telling you it needs fuel because it has run out of glucose much more than those who are really fat adapted would recognize.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, that whole carb withdrawal, the keto flu you go through when you start. You're kind of doing that every time.
Yeah. And the hunger, if we're eating a kind of standard American diet and, which tends to be higher in carb, we get hunger signals pretty frequently. And so if someone says, well, I'm going to try 18 hours without eating, they're hungry at hour 3. And so I'll check back in with them the next time. And they'll say, well, I've been hungry a lot. And what I find with people who are really find a carb balance that works for them and who are doing some intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, they really start to say, I've been so surprised I've not been hungry. So when I hear someone say they're hangry, it tells me, they're either just not fat adapted yet or they're still trying to kind of walk both sides of that. And I know that there are some people who can do that. And I know both Megan and Jason have talked about that before. There are some people who say, I'm not going to change how I eat, but I will fast. And they get some benefit from it. I don't think I would have been one of those people. One, I would have had a very difficult time fasting. But I don't think based on where my body was metabolically, that would have been adequate.
Now, I've met people who've done that, the whole 5-2 thing, and then they're actually not completely fasting on those 2 days. They're eating low calorie, but there are people that seem to make that work for them.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to work with you or sign up with IDM for the program that you were talking about before, where do they find you? How do they get hold of you? How do they do that? We'll put it all in the show notes as well, but
yeah,
let's talk about it here too.
Sure. You just go to the website, idmprogram.com. When you go there, there'll be lots of information, and then there's a place to kind of get started. You would look up the coaching or whatnot. You could do an initial consultation, and that is free. It's a 20-minute consultation with any of the coaches. So you can actually read through the bios of each coach. You can decide who you want to meet with. Go ahead and schedule that appointment. And if that feels like a good fit, you could go ahead and purchase a coaching package. And if you decided not to do the coaching program itself, but you are more interested in the online membership, there's a place to sign up for that as well. And you could just start doing that. And that also, as I said before, involves the focus groups. So even if there's someone listening and they're interested in some of what we've talked about today, but they're not interested in coaching right now, or it doesn't work out for them, lots of ways they can still learn about this and get the support. I'd love to see them at the focus group meeting. So if they join the membership community, they can come to those focus groups and get started that way as well.
Fantastic. And you're off to low carb Houston soon, I believe.
Yes, I arrived here on Thursday for my move, and I leave here on Wednesday to go to Houston. So it'll be a great few days at a conference there. Lots of great speakers, and Nadir Ali is the one who is hosting the conference, and a lot of IDM team members will be there. So it'll be a great time to network with everyone.
I was going to say, I'm sure I read somewhere there are going to be some IDM presentations going on.
Megan Ramos and Nadia Pataguana are both presenting, and Brenda Zorn is also presenting because she's coaching some people there who are doing fasting kind of live during the conference. So lots of opportunities to get to hear about fasting and the benefits, and also obviously all of us really at some level, a lower carb approach. We don't require a specific way of eating, but we do know that for many people, that's really a significant part of the process. So lots of good information will be there.
Well, have a good time there and enjoy your new home in San Diego.
Thank you.
I know you had a bit of a rough time with your end of your stay at Hawaii and moving to San Diego. There were all sorts of dramas, but hopefully the tide will turn now and things will start going smoothly and you'll enjoy your new home.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I think this is a great move, and looking forward to hosting some people in retreats out here and just all the good that's going to come.
It sounds like it'd be a perfect place for it. Well, perhaps you could round us off with a top tip.
I would say, let's go back to the mindset thing, is give yourself the benefit of the doubt and really spend some time looking at how you talk to yourself, examine it, work on changing it. It's not going to change overnight, but catch yourself in those times where you're speaking negatively to yourself or giving yourself kind of defeating messages. You can't do this. It's going to be too hard. Just turn it around, make it something more manageable, and see how that changes things for you. Because again, having a ton of knowledge about all of this will only get you so far if you're defeating yourself in your mind. So I hope people will focus on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for talking to me today. Yeah. It's been a great pleasure as always.
Absolutely. It's been great. And I can't wait till the next conference when I get to hang out with you again. That'll be awesome.
Yes, I've got kind of used to this popping over to America and getting to see everybody in person. It's become a bit of a habit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on. And it's been great talking with you.
Oh, thank you, Terri. To get the resources and links from this show, please go to ketowomanpodcast.com/episodes. Please share this podcast with as many people as possible by sharing one of my links or just taking a screenshot of an episode that you enjoyed. Reviews really help raise the profile of the podcast, which gets it in front of more people, but also helps me attract a wide variety of guests. So please take a minute to leave a review on whichever podcast app or platform you like to listen on. It doesn't go unnoticed by me, the people who regularly like, share and comment on my posts. Your support really does mean the world to me. Thank you. Are you enjoying this podcast? Help me make more episodes and videos by making a pledge at my Patreon page, patreon.com/KetoWoman. Or simply hit the support button on the Keto Woman Podcast website. Don't forget to join in the fun on the Keto Woman Podcast Instagram and Facebook pages, and Daisy_Keto Woman on Twitter. Are you my next extraordinary woman? Maybe you've got an idea for a show, a topic you would like to hear about. Let me know how I can tickle your earbuds by dropping me a line at daisy@ketowomanpodcast.com. This week's end quote is from Les Brown. Too many of us are not living our dreams because we are living our fears. Bye-bye, Keto Lovelies.